This time we're going to talk about resourcing a program. Now you can see in this sample, which is just a very simple few tasks put together, there are no resources. Okay, now before we actually start entering resources, there are just one or two things we sort of need to consider. The first thing is that we need to make sure that all new tasks are auto-scheduled, which is done in this button here. And this should be changed to auto-scheduled before we actually start entering any tasks. The other thing we need to look at is in the options and in the scheduling tab, what you can see here, the default task type says fixed units, and there are three options. We either want to leave it as fixed units but have it effort driven, or we want fixed work. So simplest scenario here is we leave it as fixed units, but this little button here says new tasks are effort driven. We want to click that task. Now I'll leave this just up for a second so you can read the note, which just explains what happens. Now when we tick this, what it means is if a job, say, takes 5 days for a team of bricklayers or a carpenter, say, and we add an extra team of bricklayers or team of carpenters, it will automatically reduce the duration of the task because we've now got twice the resources running on it. So if I just click this, and just to make sure that all of these tasks are set to this, because these were entered before I made that change, if I go to the Advanced tab, you can see fixed units, but the effort driven is not ticked in this case. Now I'm going to cancel this, and just to make sure now that all of these are covered, if I drag and select them all and then right click and choose the information box again, I can now change these en masse basically. So if I, as fixed units, and make them effort driven. And because I've clicked there, I've accidentally added a task. So I'll just, that wasn't exactly a task, it was just created there to create a bit of space. So that's sorted that. Now, as you can see here at the moment, everything is showing as being critical. That's because these two tasks finish at the same time. If I, to show you what I'm talking about there, if I make this 4-day duration, now these are no longer critical. Now, with resources, we can either start entering resources as we go, and as I type them in, that will add, or I can add them on the resources sheet. Now, if I right click on the left hand side here and go to resource sheet, you'll see that I've got one resource already loaded, and let's say I also add bricklayers, and in this case bricklayers 2. The number in brackets denote the number of bricklayers in a team. Usually I like to work in teams, which are sort of rational views. So carpenters could work either singly or in teams. Generally I would have carpenters in teams of 2 as well, but it doesn't really matter. You can set it up how you like. It really just comes down to when you are calculating durations in terms of how long things are going to take. So if I leave carpenters just as individual carpenters, put bricklayers in as a team of 2 bricklayers, because that's how they usually would work. And if I now go back to my Gantt chart, if we now look at the resources, you can see here now I've got a choice of 2, or in fact I could start typing in. So let's say this first job is actually concrete work. I could say concrete gang, and let's say there are 4 guys in a concrete gang. So that's my team of 4 concrete guys. So now you see it's accepted it, and it's putting it in and showing it, and it's added it to the list. There is a downside to this, in that if, say, I misspelt concrete gang on the next one, say on this one, it would add another resource. So if I, to show you what I mean, is I say conc gang, and now it's added it too. And this can lead to problems if you misspell, and it can be a pain to actually have to go back and fix them all. Having said that, it would only ever take maybe 5 minutes, but you can prevent this from happening. If I go back and remove that, so now we see we're back to as it was before. There is an option where I can prevent that from happening. It's like a little gatekeeper that says I can only add, or I have to double check what is being put in as a resource. In the Advanced tab, if we go to the General Options, you can see there where it says automatically add new resources and tasks. If I untick that, if I try now to put in a misspelt, or it comes up with a little warning to say this isn't in your resource pool, are you sure you actually want to put it in? So I can say yes, that's fine, and click OK, and it'll be added, but it just prevents you from making spelling mistakes, which is a useful little sort of, as I say, useful little gatekeeper. So I'm going to say no, I don't want to do that. I'm going to delete it. Now let's say concrete gang followed by bricklayers. And you can see as I start to type it in, it will autofill for me. So I can either choose and tick if I want to have bricklayers and carpenters. I could choose both or whatever. Or I can just start typing in. And when I'm writing a program, I will normally just enter these as I go, rather than try and enter them later. I'll just start typing in, and as soon as I hit to, as soon as I type enough that it identifies the resource I want, I hit OK. So let's say concrete gang, bricklayers and carpenters. OK, and we'll do the same thing here. Concrete, bricklayers, carpenters. OK. Now, as we look through this now, you see we've actually got two little red men here. What that is telling me is that the carpenters are working on this job, and at the same time they're working on this job, because you can see here they are both applied to this job. So it's telling me they're over allocated. So this warning is telling me I've potentially got a problem. So if I now go into my resources sheet, you can see these are highlighted in red. That tells me they're overnumbered. But what this is telling me at the moment is I've got one carpenter, because I haven't made a gang size, and what it's telling me is that this carpenter can only work 8 hours a day, so the work we're expecting him to do is more. If I change to a resource usage sheet, which now shows me that the carpenter is applying, he's 72 hours of work in total, and on this day he's working 8 hours, on this day he's working 8 hours, but these 3 days he's expected to work 16 hours to get the work done, and obviously he can't be in two places at once. So we either need to add additional carpenters, or the work that is overlapping needs to wait until he's finished. If I just go back to the daily sheet, so my choices are I either get additional carpenters, or this job has to move out to wait until this job is completed. But that obviously means that the program is going to be affected. And initially when we're programming the work, and as I say, bear in mind this is a very small job. As we are working out our resources for the job, we need to know how many people are going to be needed at any given time. So we can control this by adding additional resources. Now, if I go back to the resource sheet, I could either add an extra carpenter here, so carpenters 2, say, and I could split the work between, so that I could, if I say carpenters 2, so that's a second carpenter, and if I go back to my end sheet, I could say, right, with this one, instead of this being the carpenter 2, and it takes away the problem because now I've got 2 carpenters. Okay. The other way I could do it, if I take this out, you see where it says here maximum units, and if I just hover over that, what this is telling me is a carpenter working 100% of his time is working 8 hours a day. Now that effectively means then 100% is 1 carpenter. I could increase this to 200%, which essentially now is telling me I've got a pool of 2 carpenters. So the work is not going to be over allocated until we get into the position where we'd maybe need a 3rd carpenter. So if I go back to this now, you see the little red men have gone because essentially it's telling me I've got 2 carpenters. And as long as I don't go over 16 hours a day worth of work, because I've got 2 carpenters, it's not going to be a problem. If there was another clash further here, then it's the same thing. I either add more bricklayers, add more carpenters, or the work has to wait. Now, I'm going to end this section here, and we'll carry on in the next video where we'll look at this in much greater detail to see how it affects a program in the real world. Okay, so see you in the next one.